Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 350. Kristen, can you believe it? That is only one away from 351. I'm very excited. Not that that means anything, but 350 is exciting because it is my good friend Ian Spriggs, who I am very excited to have on again, this time to go on his book tour. Can you imagine? We're part of the book tour now. This is so cool.
I love it.
Yeah, he is, as many of you know, Ian Spriggs is an artist who's very famous for his digital portraits that he's done, and he's written a book called A Portrait A Portrait of the Digital Age, which is a really exciting book, and it's very exciting to see. And we had a lot of great conversations, not just about the book, but about a bunch of other things. Kristen, what did you think about the podcast?
Yeah, well, I thought it was just a super insightful podcast. So you not only talk about his new book, but you just go into depth on a lot of great subjects, from like kind of the process of creating portraits, kind of how lighting, clothes, and pose are incorporated into his images, and then to shifts in the art world over the last few years. You talk about real-time digital humans to NFTs and kind of his opinion on those. So I really enjoyed this one. And he's like the sweetest guy ever. So
He is. He is one of the kindest people out there, and I'm very excited that he was able to join us on the podcast and talk about all the cool things that he's doing in that space. Yeah, absolutely love it. And remember that you need to pre-order this book, because if you would like to get a discount on it, so go to our, I think we have a link on our page. We should have a link on our page. So go check it out. There's a link on our page that tells you exactly how to buy it, because the discounts will be over. And then the book's coming out on December 1st. So you need to pre-order now if you want to get that discount and get in on it early, which is very exciting. Okay, cool. We have a couple of announcements. What's going on, Kristen?
all right, so you can find this out at chaos.com/events. So on November 18th, we are going to have the second edition of Chaos Day India. So you can gain insights on the latest V-Ray 5 updates and how it is incorporated to the daily workflow of some of our guest speakers, and they are featured on the events page. And also we have the student rendering challenge. So we've done this the last few years. The submissions end November 23rd. So you have like a week or two after this podcast comes out. But the theme is create a better world. And you can share your vision for a chance to win lots of great prizes, from like a V-Ray education collection to Corona licenses, Chaos Cloud credits. So there's a lot of amazing things.
Great. Yeah. And you can check it out if you go to chaos.com/create a better world with dashes between all the words. So that would be cool. I can't wait to see your submissions. We also have a product announcement. V-Ray 5 has been, for Maya, has been updated to Update 2. Update 2 has got a lot of great new features in it, and I definitely highly recommend it. There is bigger and more USD integration that's been happening in there. So very excited to see that, as well as some other really great features, including stuff that we're doing inside of our frame buffer, and some really interesting V-Ray Cloud features as well. So lots of great stuff. Go check it out at chaos.com for all of your information about all of our products. If people want to know more about the podcast, where can they go, Kristen?
You can go to facebook.com/CG Garage Podcast or chaos.com/CG Garage. And if you'd like to watch us, go to youtube.com/Chaos Group TV.
Perfect. And if you guys have any ideas about our shows or comments, please leave us an email. We'd love to hear from you. labs@chaosgroup.com is our email. And of course, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, as Kristen has been saying. And don't forget to buy Ian's book. So go to our website at chaos.com/CG Garage, and we'll have a link to this specific episode, and there will be a link to Ian's book right there. So go ahead and buy it before it leaves pre-sale. But with that, please enjoy episode number 350 with Ian Spriggs.
Welcome to another CG Garage, where the Chaos Group talks. You'll know it's over when the last bucket drops. We're gonna fire off rays in high dynamic range. We know that ambient occlusion is passé. Global illumination won't lead you astray. And while image-based lighting is really swell, You need to make sure everything has Fernell.
How you been, man?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, just busy.
Very exciting news about your book. This is the big news, right?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, there it is.
That's it. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I definitely know I'm very excited about getting my copy, which will be hopefully soon. But I know that this is currently in pre-sales, right? So you'd have to. These are, if people ordered them now, they'd be that's a pre-sale. Is that correct?
Yeah. So pre-sales go until December 1st. And so basically, I think anybody who orders it before then gets a little discount. And then after that, you can still order it. It's just not in pre-sales. It's just so we have a rough how many to build.
Right. Well, I want people to order as many as possible, just so they get a bigger discount.
Yeah, me too.
No, that's really exciting. But I was thinking about this now. It's like, here you are. You've written a book about portraits, and you've done a lot of lectures on portraits, and you've done a lot of talking about it and a lot of things. This is so different. Like, a lot of things have happened to you since we first met. Like, what is it, 4 years ago, 3 years ago? Was it 4 years ago? It must have been.
Yeah, I think it was about 4 years
No, it's got to be longer than that. It's 5 years ago, I think.
It was the first time I met you on the Digital Human League. We worked together on that, but I didn't officially meet you until THU, which was, I think, 4 years ago.
Right. Okay. So that was a big deal. And I remember when I first met you there, which was really cool. You hadn't talked in public ever before, right? And you were very nervous about your talk and how to give it. And at that point, I'd given several talks, so I sort of try to help you through it. But it ended up being an amazing talk. And in fact, I think you can actually watch that talk. I think ArtStation has it available as a talk, right?
Out of all the talks I've done now, it's like the one where I seem the most nervous is the one which gets shared.
That's the one that got shared. But I got to tell you, what's interesting about that talk is that it was really good, especially considering it was your first talk. But what has changed with you, like, in terms of those, how you've been able to talk about portraits and the way you've been thinking about them since then? Like, how has everything changed for you?
Well, back then it was like 4 years. I started my portraits about 6 years ago with my self-portrait. And so I'd only been doing portraits for about 2 years, like when I did the first talk. And basically it's been like a rabbit hole. Like I really dove down into like the nitty-gritty details of like what portraiture actually means and like why it's important. And like I just was starting to like answer the bigger questions of like what makes us human and trying to actually give specific answers to stuff like that and figure out what exactly is the uncanny valley. Because there's not been too much out there about digital portraiture. Now, I mean, I found like there's nobody, it's like a new field, so nobody really knows what's going on. And so like discovering all those questions to all these answers, discovering the answers to all these questions I had, I feel like I've discovered a lot more of that stuff recently than I did when I gave my first talk.
What has changed? I mean, what have you learned, like, in terms of like what makes us human? Like what's changed there?
Well, there's just so many things what makes us human. Like in my book, I was just explaining like just like the uncanny valley, for example. That is basically relatively new concept, but it basically describes exactly what's not human. So by understanding what is not human, you kind of have an idea, well, it's eliminated all these possibilities. So now this is what is human. And it's like eyes is like connection with the eyes, connection with like body language, like what the hands are doing, stuff about what your clothes say about yourself. It's like it all adds up into what defines us as human beings. And it's what defines us as human is not just a physical representation of our face. Most people think if I get a representation of this face and match it 1-to-1, people are going to believe it's human. And it's like, well, no, that's not true. You've got so many more variables. A portrait is not just a physical representation. It's a combination of all these different aspects which make us human added into one thing. But
What is that though? I mean, there's okay. You mentioned eyes and clothes and things like that, which are things that are obvious. Eyes is obvious. Everyone knows that eyes are so important in terms of the expression. But clothes, for example, that was something you brought up. You brought up in your lectures, and you said, this is an important part of the decision, right? That people make about themselves.
like if you, for example, if I dyed my hair blue or something, people might treat me a little bit differently. They might be like, oh, he's kind of like a more of a like out of the box type of guy. He's kind of like that. So they might treat me different. I feel differently about myself. So our clothes are like, it's like an expression of who we are, but it's like it kind of dictates who we are and how we feel on the inside about how people are treating us. So if you take that concept and multiply it like 100-fold, it's like even police who wear uniforms, they become a part of a collective, and they take on this identity of a superior like person who can help somebody. Whether they believe that or not, because they're wearing the uniform, it's changed them mentally, their mental state, so they can become that person.
Right. Yeah, it's true. I think it's very interesting because, I mean, and you also mentioned, the fact that no one's really been talking about digital portraiture for a while, but they have been talking about portraiture for a very long time, right?
Well, portraiture has been around, like the human beings are the number one subject ever in art. Like we've been explored more so than any other subject ever, but yet our generation is the first one to actually explore it as the digital portraiture.
Right.
So we're kind of like taking that next step to see what else is there. And then that takes us into like the digital medium and how that's changed from being able to paint and sculpt and stuff. So yeah, I could go on about that as well, like how digital mediums open up a whole bunch of doors. Like for example, like hyperrealism. Hyperrealism it's kind of like photorealism, but it's like more of an in-depth look. Like if you can take a photo of somebody, you look at that and be like, yeah, that looks real. Hyperrealism is putting like a poetry to that story. It's making like something which is more like something believable, more believable. So I could, for example, add certain colors to make that emotion heightened, or like I could express the body language even a more extreme pose to make you feel even more. And then I can add like details on top of the photorealism, which is even more. I can make you like zoom into tiny details which you might not have seen before. And so a digital medium has allowed a lot more stuff to happen. We can create stuff which is super believable, but it's actually fake. So we can have now control over reality, basically.
Right. You can bend reality in a lot of ways, right?
Exactly.
But, okay. Now, and then you and I have discussed this in the past, but, you said that the uncanny valley is actually, a new concept. It is in the sense that in terms of the word that we use, and we only tend to associate it with digital work, right? Mm-hmm. But actually, artists have been fighting the uncanny valley forever, right? So there's some paintings, a couple hundred years ago that definitely looked like they were in the uncanny valley in some ways. Like you can almost say the Mona Lisa looks a little bit like she's in the uncanny valley, right?
Yeah, I think the depth of the uncanny valley is a lot more evident with CG than it was with paintings, though. Like you've got some like Mona Lisa is not photorealistic, but it doesn't give you that cringe as much as some of the CG stuff, because it's the CG which brings it even closer to reality, and like the closer to reality you are, the office just makes you revolted by it. Whereas paintings, it's a painting. You don't confuse it to be a photograph. You don't confuse it to be reality.
Right. I guess that's true. But it does have that cringe factor. That's, I don't know. Mona Lisa just looks a little weird to me sometimes. I mean, I think she's great. I think it's a great painting, but it is a little bit strange. Yeah. You actually have a great story about the Mona Lisa too. You talked about in your lectures. Tell us the story about what makes her special.
Yes,
Or not special, actually.
So yeah, I talked about like icons and like why we like the stuff we like. Like, are we told we like it because we're supposed to like it, or do we actually like it because we actually like it? So I think the Mona Lisa
Right.
is a perfect example of that, because everybody loves the Mona Lisa, basically. But it's like we like it because it's like we're so famous. Like everyone who talks about it says they love it. So it's like almost if you don't say you love it, it's almost like, oh, what's wrong? And I think that a part of that happened is because in 1911 the Mona Lisa was stolen, and when it was stolen, everybody came in and left flowers and remembrances in its place because they were like, oh, we've lost something. And then because of that, it became like this mass icon. Everyone was talking about it. And then they realized that, I think it was the janitor who stole it. Everyone thought Picasso stole it, but it was actually the janitor.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it was returned, it was like an internet, like a news sensation. Everybody was talking about it. And then all of a sudden it became the first icon in history, basically. Like the first major, huge one like this before. And everyone all of a sudden loved it. And so it's almost like, well, do you like it because of the marketing made it like, or do you actually look at it and be like, I feel a connection with that painting?
Right. And what's your thoughts? I mean, because she wasn't that famous before then, right? As a painting.
Not at all. I think it was a little bit of marketing which made it famous.
Right.
And a little bit, yeah. So I don't know. I think I'm like you. I like the painting, but I'm not overly moved by it.
Right. Right. Well, the other thing that, you mentioned is obviously, like you said, you've had, there hasn't been much discussed about digital art, but there has been a lot discussed about portraiture and in general. And that's something that you, as opposed to other sometimes digital portrait artists, you have studied portraiture much more, or to a bigger extent than most people. What have you learned from regular portraiture, or what has inspired you and made you think about your portraits in that way? What's been the things that's been really sort of helped you learn the way
yes.
what you have learned?
So a lot of the stuff I look at is from like the masters of art history, like Rembrandt and Caravaggio, and it's like I learned like from the lighting they do. It's like how basically it's like lighting can just create an entire mood. You can have like sharp contrast lights, which creates more aggressive or more Rembrandt style, which is more like introspective and kind of pulls you in a little bit. So I've really learned what they've done, which works and what kind of doesn't work. And I do try to like let my work be influenced by them. I don't like copy it, but I do like try to understand them and how the stuff works, so I can take those techniques and pull them into my own work. So some examples like Rembrandt, he'll do like pictures of his paintings of his like self-portraits, and then if you look at his hands, the hands are basically just blurred out, and it's like you don't really notice it because he's so focused on the face, and it's like he's basically blurred out the hands to make you focus on his face. So techniques like that, you're like, okay, well, it kind of makes sense of where you should be focusing and like how important eye direction is in a painting.
Yeah, and I think that's something that people don't realize. They just want to make someone look very photoreal.
Yeah, exactly.
And they lost the context of the story you're telling.
Yeah. Like I think making a believable digital human being is not about the photorealistic, like I was saying. It's just like all these variables of like what you should be looking at, what the story is, what the person is thinking. Yeah.
And you used to paint too, didn't you?
I was painting a bit, yeah, just before I touched 3D. Did a lot of portraits, and I was kind of doing more of political art, I would say. It wasn't really too, like it was focused on people, but the human figure wasn't the central subject, whereas now the human figure is the most central subject.
Yeah, it was interesting what I saw, because I saw some of your earlier work, which was interesting. And like you said, it is quote unquote political, but it's paintings, but they're based on old paintings, and you're updated them for modern political reasons.
Yeah, basically.
Almost satirically.
Yeah, it's true. I did the After the Medusa by Theodore Géricault. So I did like a contemporary version. Instead of shipwreck, I did a plane wreck. And in the painting, they're waving to a ship in the background to save them. And my version is they were waving to an oil rig for their savior, but it's kind of like the oil put them in the plane in the first place. So I could the
Right.
paradox.
Yeah. See? Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, but you think about a lot of these things, and obviously there's another thing that you've done is obviously you've been influenced by a lot of these characters as well. And I remember when you started doing your portraits, you'd say, you know, this is the thing that inspired me to do this portrait, or when I look at my mother, I like to look at her this way, and I like to do this thing. And so you have a lot of inspiration. What's your feeling about when you're looking at things like portraits and about inspiration? Like how does that feed you in a lot of ways?
How does inspiration?
Yeah, how do you find inspiration? Like, how do you go for it and like say, you know, that's what I want. That's the inspiration that I want for this specific thing.
Usually I like to get to know the person. So most of my portraits are of people I know, like my friends, my family.
Right.
And so because I know them, I can kind of get a good sense of who they are, and I let that inspire the direction of the portraits. So rather than just going online and finding some random person I don't know and just trying to create this personality which I don't know about, I try and know who the person is, figure out what type of person, and then I'll look at art history and I try and get the same sense of a feeling from painting which might suit their personality. And then I'll go through like different lighting styles, which have been used in art history now. Like this is a perfect lighting style. Like it's like my portrait of Cassidy was inspired by the Mona Lisa because Cassidy is a younger woman. I didn't know her too well, and I also most people don't know who the Mona Lisa is. So I thought it was kind of like a good comparison because it's kind of like it was innocent and like so I used soft, gentle lighting, everything. The composition was all curves and oval shapes, which is very similar to what the Mona Lisa was.
Right, but it's interesting how you think that it helps you, right? It gives you direction in terms of where you want to go, right? If you say, okay, I'm inspired by this, then as opposed to I don't know what I'm going to do. You know what I mean?
Like my portrait of Neil Blomkamp, I wanted to be inspired by Caravaggio style lighting. Caravaggio did the very hard like lighting on one side, dark shadows on the other. And it was very like he did a lot of split lighting, like the shadow right down the nose. And so I thought for Neil, because he was one of the top directors out there, I wanted to have the same power in his portrait. And I thought Caravaggio's lighting was the most powerful, so I used his style of lighting in Neil Blomkamp's portrait.
Right. And I want to get into lighting. I want to go back to Neil and talk about the hands for a bit. But before we get into that, let's talk about lighting, because I think that's something I saw in your book, because I've seen, I've been sort of showing previews of it to me. But there's a large section about lighting that you've included in your book and teaching people about lighting, right?
Yeah.
So what's interesting is obviously this lighting techniques is something that's been used in portraiture for a long time. Most people think of it as what's used in photography, which is also a form of portraiture.
Yeah.
But what have you, I mean, like, tell us some of the things that people need to be breaking down when they're looking at lighting and how they can affect things.
I think if I was to ever teach a class on lighting, I would basically say you should just use one light. Forget about all these backlights, like multiple lights. Just get one light and see what that one light is capable of doing. So it's like you've got the main key light, and it's like if you have it from the like directly from the front, you get flat lighting. You get it from the side, you get like split lighting. You get it from above, you can get like a butterfly lighting where you create a shadow under the nose. You've got from a 45, you get like a Rembrandt where you get like a light. And each one of those lighting styles creates a different mood for the subject. So if you want like dramatic subject, you can use split lighting. Like the John Wick posters, the Marvel posters, they always use split lighting. Whereas like if you're watching like Friends or Full House or like some sitcom like that, they use flat lighting, the lights straight from the front, because they don't want the shadow creating the story. The shadow is supposed to be taken out because shadow creates the narration. And so for sitcoms, they don't want that stuff. They want the story to come from the actor, not the lighting.
Right.
And so this one light, you can basically create any type of emotion you want. So the placement of the lights is crucial in portraiture, and also I'd say the size of the lights. So if you have like smaller lights, you'll get crisper shadows. Larger light, you'll feel more like a drowsy day, feel more like more of a gloomy, like portrait type of style. So the size of the light works. And then also you have to consider the light fall off. So how close the light is and far away the light is. And so fall off is another technique which can create mood in a piece. Rembrandt would use very soft fall off. So his light would be relatively close. And so there'll be a lot of fall off from the cheeks to the like torso. Whereas Caravaggio would use lighting where it'll be further away, but there'll be a stronger light source all over with a very quick change from light to shadow. So yeah, you talk a lot in the book about the light fall off and how the inverse square law works. So basically light.
Yeah, which is interesting because they didn't have, big flashes or softboxes back then, but yet they had all those stand closer to the window or further away from the window, right? That's the kind of, yeah.
Like I'm sure Rembrandt probably used like a lot of the candle lighting or something. And then like Vermeer obviously used like window lighting.
Right.
But yeah, it's all like, if you understand the inverse square law of how light works, you can really understand how the light would work. And you can, rather than guessing what it's going to do, you can just kind of go right off the bat and know what it's going to do. So the inverse square law, basically, light doesn't die, it just gets dispersed.
Right.
So the further away the light, there'll be more like, you'll get stronger shadows, but the closer the light, there'll be a lot more fall off.
Right.
It's kind of hard to explain.
Well, that's all in the book.
Yeah.
It's all in the book, so people should get it if they want to see more about it, which is great. But yeah, obviously, like you said, I mean, you've been doing a lot of lectures on this now, and then compared to like that 4 years ago when you did your first lecture, you've been doing a lot of things and evolving, and you've also been going through a lot of evolution. You've gone and revisited a lot of subjects from your early portraits and redid them. It's a kind of a ballsy thing to do because, hey, look how much things have changed. So what is your own portrait has changed quite a bit from from your first one to your second one. And the same with Erica and your mom and everyone else. So, and your brothers as well. Mm-hmm. So what have you learned between those two things, and what has changed in your style between those two phases?
So I think there's like two major changes, one artistically and then one with technology. So with digital work, technology is very evident. So a year later, you can tell like, oh, this work is old. And so you can see the technology improve. So I always try to avoid showcasing too much of the technology in the work and try to make a timeless piece. But it's impossible. Right. Like, just technology just gets better and better. So between these two portraits of myself and my later version, you can really see the technology difference. But also, I say on top of that, as an artist, I've obviously grown. I can understand what I'm supposed to be looking at, like what's the most important features of what a subject should be, and express that a little bit better. And I think the self-portraits I did, you can see in my very first one, I was kind of slouched over, my hair was kind of messy. I kind of looked unconfident. Like I like the portrait, but I was like unsure of myself. Whereas my latest portrait, instead of me like kind of like facing this way like this, I'm more facing towards the camera and holding out like I have a light above my head, and it's saying I confidently know that I'm a portrait artist now. Like I'm not questioning or asking your permission if I can do my art and like I hope you like it type of thing. I'm saying no, this is who I am. This is what I do. So I think. Do
you feel that in yourself as well? Like honestly.
Yeah, I feel a lot more confident in my work now than when I first started.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing work, obviously. And, I can definitely see difference. Now, you mentioned the technology change. Like, what technology changes have you noticed? Because I know you, and you're not always, like you said, you're like, I don't want to rely on the technology too much. In fact, you use as few features as possible just not to muddy the water.
Yeah.
And I know this of you.
Yeah.
You do. But what has changed? What has changed that you can think of?
I think reference has got a lot better. So like I've got a better camera now, so I can get like better skin details. Like texturing XYZ maps have come out, and they're like more poor details. So I look at those and try and create my own versions for my own photographs. So it's like understanding what the skin looks like closer up. I've looked at it through work. I've looked at a lot of scans now, and so just by looking at scans, I have a lot better understanding of form and anatomy. So just like, because it's like before like scans came out, you didn't know, most people didn't really know what the human skin looks like without color. And so seeing it without color for the first time, you really understand the shapes and forms of that. So I've had a lot more experience looking at scan data.
Right.
The rendering, I think, has got a lot better too. Like V-Ray's the GPU stuff. That's just been I think that's probably been the biggest change for me. Just more real-time rendering. I can create more iterations with my work. It was 6 years ago, I'd have to wait an hour per render just to see if I want to make a change in the eye, render it for an hour. Like, no, got to do it again. So with this V-Ray GPU stuff, it's like seconds. I can do it on the fly, and I get like 10,000 portraits per portrait, basically.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's cool. So real-time rendering, you're starting, and you know, the kind of stuff you're doing is super high detailed. We're not talking video game stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So you've been able to do, I mean, obviously I know, well, both Chaos Group and NVIDIA have been big fans of your work. And so we've been supporting you in this whenever we can.
Absolutely.
But being able to, using GPU rendering, you've been able to really get through some pretty hardcore iterations on these things, right?
Yeah, I think, like NVIDIA and V-Ray supported me, got me some graphic cards. I think at that point I turned a leaf. I think that's when I first did, I think that's when I did my self-portrait, my second one. And I feel like I overcame this this barrier of like realism. Like I was always hitting this mark, and then I just didn't know how to get over. And then with a GPU, I was able to make 100 more iterations, and I was able to make mistakes to see which avenue I should be going down.
Yeah, you weren't afraid to make a mistake, right? Because you can always correct it quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember, you know, I keep telling this story, and this is a long time ago, but it was specifically it was at Sony. I was working on the last movie that they ever used a program called Burps on, which was their lighting package at the time. And if you moved the light, this was before they were ray tracing even, this was with old RenderMan. If you moved the light, you had to re-render a shadow map on the farm to get that. And so you'd have to wait. So people just didn't move lights because it was a pain in the ass. So they would never make that it held them back in terms of being able to just move a light. And so it was very like the fact that you can move your light and continually do that and then make the decision as you're doing it is kind of obviously a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But you also, there's a lot of stuff that happened with hair too. Your hair started to look very different after a while. I think you started doing different things with hair. What happened there?
V-Ray came out with that amazing V-Ray hair shader.
Yeah.
That was life-changing. So before I was using, was it NHair? Maya NHair? The V-Ray, I can't even remember what it's called. The old V-Ray?
The old hair shader.
And so basically I had to make a patch, and then I made another patch, and then another patch, and then basically I would have to make hair by using patches. And then I started using XGen, which is a lot easier. Still takes a lot of work to make it realistic, but it gives more natural results. And then adding a V-Ray hair shader to it, where I can control the melanin levels and like randomizations throughout different hair strands and stuff. That really made a more believable hairstyle and look.
Yeah. I think that was you could definitely tell how, you know, if you go through your history, like, oh, there's a moment there their hair changed. Something changed. So it's pretty cool. Now you mentioned your work. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing at work and where you work now?
So I work at Unity now. So I'm just modeling some some real-time digital humans. Just trying to,
Okay.
yeah, I'm more of like in the labs departments. So I'm doing more of the exploration stuff and of like how to actually progress the digital human forward. So I'm just creating a whole bunch of characters for that, and yeah, just trying to push the realism in the real-time renderer.
What do you think what do you think about digital humans now in real time rendering? I mean, this is the thing. This is going to be important. Everyone is doing it. Everyone has some kind of a digital human program. I'm sure Apple even has one, and Facebook has one, and Epic has one, Unity has one. Like digital humans in real time is a big subject. Like what's going on there? What's your thoughts on that?
I think, I think it's a long way off before being indistinguishable from reality. I feel like no matter what, they're still kind of cartoony. I feel like the best right now is just to, if you can just avoid the uncanny valley. But I feel like they're getting better, and they're becoming, like some of the gaming stuff has become quite good. But there's still a huge gap between real time and just like rendering offline, I guess. So,
Well, what is sure, but what do you think the roles are going to be with digital humans in real time? I think people are looking at them for games, or are they looking at it for avatars? Are they looking at it for the metaverse? Whatever you want to define that as these days. But what do you think they're going to be used for?
it's kind of hard. That's a big question. I'm not sure exactly what they could be used for, because basically, I think what we're trying to do is recreate our reality, and like in digital, so we can have more control. So it's like basically anything we do now as humans, they're going to do the same things in the digital world. Like we will have real estates where you can go like get your digital avatar to go live in the new real estate, and we'll have
Right.
you can be able to change your face. It's basically just becoming anybody you want to be, I think, is the idea. So
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I think it's like there's a lot of fear amongst it. I think it's called digital phobic, whereas people have the fear that the digital is going to be this digital omnipresence, and everyone's going to be using fake news, and everyone's going to be lying and all this stuff. But I think it has a huge upside potential too, because it's like we can be honest about it. We can change our faces, change our features, and I don't know, travel like this online internet world or something. And it's like you can start doing stuff you can't actually do in real life. So I think it's actually, and it'd be like for medical purposes, this might give us more insight of how to do stuff like this. Movie productions, you can just mostly work from home. So stuff like coronavirus, if stuff like this happens again, like it won't hold back people's lives.
Right. Yeah, possibly. I think it's very interesting to think about, but I don't know. There's something very. I completely agree with you. The digital phobia. I've never heard that term, but that's a very good one. I will continue to use that term. People were so freaked out about deepfakes when there's I mean, of course, there's situations that you should be aware of, but the best thing you can do with deepfakes is make deepfakes and say this is a deepfake, so that people get used to seeing them, and they'll know to question things that might be a deepfake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like everyone just automatically goes to the negative for some reason. Like, oh, it's going to be fake news. It's like, well, imagine like so like a CEO of a company is like giving a presentation on the top of a exploding volcano. That would be like pretty cool to see. But it's like,
right,
you can have a lot of more upside potentials, but it's like it doesn't always need to be something fake.
Right. No, it's the last talk I did just before the pandemic hit. I went to Vegas and I was on a panel that was done by IATSE, the SAG-AFTRA, not IATSE, SAG-AFTRA, which is the Screen Actors Guild, and they were concerned about deepfakes and what deepfakes was going to do to actors and what they're doing, and taking their likeness and stealing it. And I was like, yeah, maybe, or maybe it means you don't have to be there anymore.
Exactly.
Just, so it's kind of interesting to think about it that way. But anyway, I think it's definitely an interesting subject. But what about the challenges? Like you said earlier, he says we've got a long ways to go before they're indistinguishable from humans, especially when it comes to real time.
Mm-hmm.
What are the challenges that you feel, besides the obvious lack of detail that you can't get right now? Are there other challenges that you think are there as well?
Right now, I would say the biggest challenge would be movement, because your body is such a complex machine. It's like you got the skeleton, the muscles, the flesh, the fats, the skin, all the gravity on top of that. And it's like everything's all moving all at the same time, and it's like you can't recreate that at the moment. So I think you can get a pretty realistic digital human stationary, but as soon as it moves, it kind of breaks down a little bit. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge we're facing right now for digital humans.
Right. Yeah, I agree for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But there's going to be, it's interesting. So I've been working on a project, and I sometimes think that we overthink things, especially when we try to do things and make things more complicated than they need to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes the technology gets in the way of the realism. And so I was doing a virtual production project where I've been playing around here in my backyard, and we captured someone's face with literally just an iPhone and some blend shapes, the ARKit blend shapes that come that work. And I was going to like, oh, this is going to look terrible. And then because the thing is, you're right. Like I've been seeing a lot of stuff recently with digital humans, like metahuman stuff that's come out from Epic is everywhere, and it looks like metahuman stuff.
Yeah.
Like it all looks very like the motion of the face to me, honestly, just does not look right at all. And so I was worried it was going to look that way, and I realized, oh, I think what I did, because mine was not photoreal or not supposed to look like a perfect human.
Yeah.
The motion was pretty darn good considering I just used a phone and I didn't have any markers or anything,
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say that she looks real, but I'm just saying that the expression was there. Like somehow I could get the expression. And I think that's the challenge you're saying right now, right? Is getting the right expression to come through.
Yeah, exactly. I think so. Yeah, I think right now it's like we're taking like a math approach to the digital humans for the most part for stuff like this. And it's like we're like, all right, we've discovered that there's a skin shader, we've discovered the hair shader, and we've got a list of variables, and let's say, I don't know, 1,000 variables we've got locked down. But a digital human is 1,000,000 variables. So with time, we'll just add enough variables that you've created enough that you actually won't be able to see the difference. You might not add all of them, but it'll be enough for you consciously not to be aware of anything else.
Yes. Now, this is actually an important point because I've had this discussion about your work with lots of people, including a lot of our developers over at Chaos, who have seen some of your files and some of what you've done, and their basic reaction. And this is, I think, everyone who's doing digital humans or doing things that seem like it should be very complex, like humans, should note this. You don't change a lot of variables. You use mostly default things for almost everything.
Yeah.
And you only control the things that you can control or you have the better control of, such as textures and modeling.
Yeah.
And everything else stays the same because you know that that's a variable that you don't need to touch. I mean, is that something that you think people should really note a lot more when they're doing things? Right?
No, I think, yeah, like I think there's like technology. Once you get to a certain level, like you can get away with a lot of stuff. I mean, you can start tweaking stuff and making shaders a bit better and really fine tuning those numbers. But I think better time spent is like wondering about the artistic side of things, like talking about like body language and how does that body language make that digital human feel real? How does the eye contact change how you feel? Like the lighting, there's a whole bunch of artistic variables which will outweigh these tweaking these numbers and some shaders that you don't really know what they mean.
Yeah. I think that's definitely a good point. All right, I want to couple, talk to you a little bit about something else that you and I were screwing around with a little bit earlier this year, and I'm sort of wondering what your feelings are about it now. I remember, this was back around March or so, when a lot of people are starting to put out NFTs, and you decided to experiment in that market, and you put out a couple of NFTs. What are your thoughts about that, and how that went, and where it is today?
It's I went from pretty positive about it to begin with to not as positive about it. So
Okay.
My interpretation is like before NFTs, there was the art world, and then there was the business side of the art world, and the business side of the art world took the art from the art world and kind of made it into money. It was all about money. Like, we'll make some artists famous, we'll sell their work for millions of dollars, and it was about tax write-offs, and it became a business basically. And so it's no longer about good quality arts. It became more about the business side of it. How can you make more money from it? And so
Right.
NFTs came out, and I was like, this is amazing, because those businessmen, those business people, they have no input of what is going to be bought. And the stuff which was being bought was some of like really cool artwork. And so good quality artwork finally was going to make it step forward and be able to become like well known and have the reputation it deserves. But then I'm realizing now that's not happening. It's people are buying stuff so they can trade it, and it's becoming a business now. So the stuff
Right.
the stuff which sells isn't really good stuff. Like stuff which sells for $500,000 is like most people could do. It's just happened to be that this person got lucky, or there's some good artists out there, like People and Raphael Gossetti, like some phenomenal artists. But a lot of the
Right.
some small stuff, it's not good work. And I feel like these people, the collectors, have become the art business people. Like it's been replaced.
It's interesting that you say that, because I've actually been thinking about that as well. And I think what was interesting is that market, when Beeple did what he did, right, which went crazy on the news. It was several things that we were discussing back then. It's like, oh, this is great. Digital artists finally have a market, right? It was very hard for digital artists. You could do a print of your thing and you put it up in a museum or whatever, but everyone knows it's a digital file, right? So it doesn't have the same thing as buying a painting, but somehow the idea of this NFT is like, this is a legitimate place to do that. But that's when, the art world sort of took on NFTs and it became a big thing. But NFTs were much bigger than just paintings, right? They were doing other things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what happened back then is that the market got saturated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone started just whatever gift they made back when they thought they were going to make a quick dollar, and it just didn't make any sense. So I think the NFT market's changing, honestly. I think, and you're right, it is about money. It always was.
Yeah.
It was about money when you were selling your NFT too.
Yeah, it's true. But I feel like there's a lot of good artists making some headway. Like People is the first one we mostly know about, and he's got some like very conceptually good artwork, because his artwork's about like
That's worth money.
Yeah, that's what's nice. Like, he deserves.
So that's what that he's doing is like, look, this is actually worth something, and it's translating into cryptocurrency, which is fine. I think that's fine. I think if I don't know, I think there's something really kind of okay about it, about that aspect of the money part of things. There's obviously a lot of questions about the carbon footprint that need to be addressed at some point as well. But that was an interesting thing. Yeah. But I thought it was interesting that you dabbled into it. You want to see what it was like. And I think that everyone should at least experience it.
Yeah.
And come, and then, obviously you haven't put any NFTs out in a while, or just that one time you put out two of them, right?
I've put 4 out in total. I've sold 2 of them. So
okay.
50-50. So,
Yeah. All right.
I'm doing okay, I guess, I suppose.
Yeah. That's better than okay. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So you sold for, what, on the practical side of thing, what was your experience about doing that? Was it complicated? Was it good? Was it easy? Was it, what was it, the experience of doing
I
that?
think it's just more stressful than anything. Like practically, it's
Really?
just you just got to set up your wallet and stuff. I mean, you can just go online and they'll give you a step-by-step instructions of exactly how to do it. So it's pretty easy to get into it. It's just the stress of entering the space because everyone's got such high hopes, and then most people are getting crushed.
Yeah.
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 I think that's the difficult part for everybody. And it's like the emotional, the mental health, I think. Because art is not about making money. Like, I know like a lot of people think like there's art, like money behind it, but the deep down, art is not about money. It's about expressing yourself, putting yourself out there, creating something you want, it's you in artwork, it's your voice. And that's the purpose of art. It doesn't matter if people like it, it doesn't matter if people buy it. It's just being creative. Basically, that's what art is. And so,
But I think there's ways, there's ways of making money and being creative at the same time. At least there should be, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't have all these creative things around us, right?
yeah, but
And
you
everything
shouldn't feel
that's
like a failure. Like you shouldn't feel like you failed if you don't fail, because that's not what it's about. Like,
and I think that's also, and it's been, there was a lot of division in the art world too, right? About this, like on Instagram, et cetera. I mean, you didn't necessarily get the best feedback from some of your people because of you entering this market, right?
Yeah, I think those became a little bit of I'm not sure about like jealousy, or there was a little bit less support for the community because people were making some good money, and then some people were like, well, I deserve it too, because some of the stuff which was selling was not good art, and they were making millions of dollars, and then somebody who was a good artist would come by and like, oh, like I'm not sold a single piece, like this is ridiculous, like you don't deserve it. And people started realizing that likes and all that stuff actually equals money. And so they'd be like, well, I'm not going to like your stuff because if I like it, that equals money for you. So I think there was a little bit of anger and jealousy on that level. I think it's getting a bit better now. But yeah,
Yeah. It's interesting that happened, but it's also about marketing too, right? Like the people that were not necessarily good artists, but were making millions of dollars, were probably better at marketing themselves than the people that made less.
It's possible.
I think better artists.
Yeah. I think it's like different people. Like some people are marketing themselves. Some people are just I don't know. I honestly, if I knew, I probably would do it too. If I knew the secret.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, I do remember a lot of people, and Raphael Gert, he's done some great work out there, right? But I looked at his work. I was thinking about it, back when this was all happening, and there was a lot of great work out there, a lot of really cool things. And I looked at Raph's work, and I was like, okay, look, he's very smart. Like, it's not just that he's a great sculptor, right?
Yeah, exactly.
He knew the audience of that market. That market are, at the time, and still is probably a bunch of crypto bros, right? I don't want to necessarily say. So he made sculptures of people that are deeply into the crypto world.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And so he made those guys. And so I was like, oh yeah, I want a portrait of that guy. He invented Ethereum, or whatever it was. Like he made portraits of those specific people.
Yeah.
And I think that is smart, because it's not just him being talented as an artist is one thing, but he's also selling his art to a specific audience at this point, right?
Oh yeah, he's one artist who's really is able to connect with the audience on another level. So I think he's done pretty well for himself. And people the same. He's connected to like the more of like a social commentary of what art is kind of like, where it's like he does one every single day, and basically that's like a comment of like we have millions of images coming in every day, and it's just like pile on pile of art. And his work, because he does it every day, is like it makes a comment on the fact that we're piling on art type of thing. And then he also makes it interesting about funny jokes about political issues and stuff. So he's done pretty well for himself too.
Yeah. He's, in fact, it was interesting. I was many years ago, I was at the D2 conference in Vienna, and it was an ArcViz event, and Beeple was there at the event. And during one of the happy hours, he was drawing creating one of his one of a day pieces of art while we were sort of sitting around watching him work. So he's like, "Hey, I got to get my art out today." And so he's like drinking a beer and working in Cinema 4D, or I think that was C4D. It was pretty hilarious.
Nice.
So that's cool. And then, you take that concept, 5,000 paintings, right? Or 5,000 things, and turn that into something sellable. I think that was a really brilliant thing.
I think that's one of the biggest things as an artist, like, because everyone has that goal of what they want to do and like really push it to the absolute limits. Like Beeple's doing one per day, and that's like he's pushed that to the absolute limits. Like you can't really work hard on that. Raph's
right.
do the same thing, connecting with the audience the best he can. It's like, and then here I'm trying to do portraiture the best I can, just dive in as deep into portraiture as I can. I think to be successful, you have to really find that love in art and go as deep into it as you possibly can, whatever avenue that can be.
Well, what is the next thing for you for portraiture?
I've explored a lot of like doing friends and family and portraiture specifically, but I think I want to focus more on the human figure. So not specific person, not trying to capture the specific identity of somebody, but more of like the human body and how that can be seen in different ways. So like how lighting can change something, or what body language means. I want it to be more about a communication of how humans communicate, rather than saying this is a portrait of myself or my brother or my friend. I want to just explore that stuff. I've done a couple like this before, like my portrait of Heidi. I put a super bright red light on her face, and she has a very like calm, gentle pose, which is very contrasting. So I thought that kind of opened up a doorway for me to realize like, oh, it's very aggressive, violent light compared to a gentle, kind pose. And it was like, how does that make the viewer feel like putting those two opposing things together? And then I did a portrait of Marie, where it was like when the NFTs first came out. NFTs are basically like you have an original source from multiple copies of an image. So you have multiple copies, but then now there's NFTs defined in one original one. So I wanted to see if I can convert that into a digital human. So I have one face multiplied 4 times, and it starts exploring like how does identity change? Like if you can multiply somebody, where does the identity lie?
Right.
And so I like those concepts of like seeing humans in a different way. I really am quite intrigued by that. So I want to explore those avenues more.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. It's interesting. Were you influenced a little bit? You must have, by some of the stuff that Scott Eaton has done and has been exploring as well. Is that something that has sort of had an influence on you?
A little bit, yeah. Like I think I'm more influenced by his mindset, more so than his actual, like his work is like his AI driven, right? He's created some amazing sculptures, and it's just absolutely beautiful stuff. What I like about Scott Eaton's stuff is the fact that he was an anatomy guy teaching anatomy, and then he completely changed path onto a different direction, and he used all of his knowledge to take that next step of like everything he learned in his life to take that next step. And I think he's become a more powerful artist because of it. And I would feel like doing something similar, taking everything I've learned about portraiture and seeing how I can also change my path a bit, see what that next step is.
Do you feel that AI has a role in any of the things you're doing, or?
It's possible. I've not explored it, but I'm not going to say no to it. I'm open to like any technology or any tool if it helps me express what I want and helps me learn more about the human, like what makes us human beings. I'll take whatever tool I can get.
Yeah. It's. I think it's really cool. I love Scott's work, obviously, as you know, and you and I have sat down with him for hours going over it and going, what the hell is this? This is amazing. So yeah, it's definitely really cool stuff. And I definitely think people should check it out. Well, listen, I'm very excited about the book that's coming out.
Thanks.
Again, people, where can people find it? If they want to find out about
thejuicebar.eu.
Thejuicebar.eu, and then just look up Ian Spriggs portraits in there.
Yeah, basically.
Is that the name of the book? It said Ian Spriggs portrait, right?
Ian Spriggs' Portrait of the Digital Age.
Portrait of the Digital Age. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. So definitely check it out. I highly recommend that if you guys are interested in what that means. And Ian is obviously, a good friend of mine, and I'm very excited about him doing that. And just thinking about the fact that you did that one lecture where you're like, I don't know if I can do this, like 4 years ago, and here you are writing books about it and selling it to everyone. It's really kind of exciting.
That's true.
Is anyone you want to thank to help out on the book as well?
Hold on a second.
Okay. Oh, well, there you go. There you go.
I'd like to thank this gentleman right here.
He's just for the audio people. He opened up the book to a page where my portrait was featured in there. So thank you so much for that. But yeah, it's been really cool. So I'm very excited about that, and people should definitely check it out. Well, it's cool. Anything else you want to announce is coming up, or people should check you out obviously on Instagram and see where your next portrait is coming from. When's the next one going to be dropping?
Maybe in a week or two. I actually did a portrait. I told you I'll never do it, but I did it. I did a portrait of a child.
Kid. Right.
Yeah, it was one of the most.
That must have.
So challenging. Like the challenges of doing a digital kid is just on another level. It's like the anatomy is different, the skin's different, like there's like the chubby cheeks, like the subsurface skin, like everything is like everything you think you know, it's wrong when it comes to kids.
Okay. I'm looking forward to seeing that one. It's going to be interesting. I mean, you and I, when we were walking around the museum in Malta, we were looking at some of those portraits, and the children are like just weird looking in some of those paintings. You just never get them right. Yeah.
Very hard. I did that one talk where I had like a 10 pictures of paintings of kids, and all of them were just like hideous. Like,
yeah. All right. Well, I look forward to seeing yours, and hopefully it's not hideous. But I'm sure it'll be great. I'm sure it'll be great. Well, cool. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Ian. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for chatting with me too, Chris.